All right. So tonight we're going to be doing, setting up authentication, some user management, um, mostly back-end work. So hopefully, if everything goes smoothly, we'll have the ability to log in, create, register new users in WAC tonight. So that's it. We'll go ahead and get started. So I've already moved this into progress. Let's see. So we're going to have users provide a nickname and their doodle gesture to log in. There's not going to be any kind of registration process or anything. So um, if the user doesn't exist, we're going to create it. If it does exist, we'll match the password. Tonight we may just fake that and make it so everybody gets to log in or whatever. We'll see if we have time. We should be able to we actually should be able to use the functions we already written for doing image matching and get that working. I just don't want to be spending time tuning that tonight. Um, so yeah, no registration process, create if they don't exist. Otherwise, log them in. This user should be able to change their display name. We might punt this to later. And then we're going to be implementing our authentication using a spec called Passetto, which we've talked about a couple of times in past streams. But there's a node package that kind of wraps that up, and we're actually going to go through that now first. So you can Google around. I don't think this is like a super widespread thing, but it's been really convenient. I've used JWTs a lot in the past, and the issue I always run into um, is that every application does their JWT auth subtly different. Um, so you end up with these just weird inconsistencies between applications, and this is kind of um, it's a lot more technical, than this, but it's really just an opinionated JWT implementation. So I kind of like the idea that some security pros have gotten together and said these are the ciphers we're going to use. This is um, how the user, the developer, is going to interact with JSON Web Tokens, and I don't have to make those decisions. So I'll put this link in the PR, but um, you can kind of follow on. This is off the Okta website. They have a good blog post that's it's a little bit old now, but it gives you a good kind of marketing, like what's the gist, what's the high or kind of the what's the high level of Passetto. So come in, these look a lot like JWTs. So you kind of have this like version, signed bits, and then a signature at the end or whatever. Passettos have this extra piece of information here that describes what type of token this is. So this is a local token, but there's also public tokens. So they get into all of that down here. So this of type is purpose. Next part's payload, and yeah, there's a signature they put in the. I think footer is like just plain text. It's not signed or anything. So it's kind of like if you just had metadata about the token that wasn't sensitive at all, you could throw that in the footer. But it's optional. Um, okay, so there's two types or two purposes for Passetto tokens. There's local and public. Local, it uses symmetric encryption to kind of, you'll have like a private key that when you mint the tokens, you'll use that key to mint those. And then you kind of have this opaque token that floats around the internet. Just like a JWT, you can bake claims into your token. So you could put we'll end up putting like subject, which would be the current authenticated user. And there's some other standardized claims you use, but you could also put whatever you want here. So if you had like scopes or roles or whatever you wanted to do, you could do that. And using a symmetric token, you'd be you still don't want to put like super sensitive things in there just because It's maybe not best practice, but theoretically it's all encrypted and no one's going to be able to get that unless they get your secret key. So when you receive a token, you use that same secret key to decrypt it, and then you're good to go. Public tokens work a little bit differently, where you will use a secret key to sign a token, but that payload is you can decode that token without it's not encrypted or anything. So you basically base64 decode that, and now you have like the JSON payload that was there. So you could read anything that the application that created or minted the token put into that token. So there's times where you'd use this. You definitely wouldn't put sensitive things inside the token at that point. You really only put maybe who they authenticated, like who the subject is or whatever. Maybe the roles they have, just stuff like that. Places you'd use a public Paseto might be maybe if you want to put things in the token that the front end would use to kind of do a first pass of, a user with this role should see this menu versus not or whatever, but you certainly wouldn't want that to be like your entire authorization scheme. It'd just be kind of a convenience thing. But anyway, yeah, so you'll have a public and private key. You'll use the private key to sign. You'll share the public key with whoever you want. That public key's a client's ability, or gives the client the ability to verify that the token actually came from your application. So I think this is what we're going to end up using with WAC. But anyway, yeah, go through the rest. You can go through the rest of this blog post, and they kind of have examples of, yeah, you could have like your own custom claims. Here's some standardized claims. This will look familiar to anybody that's messed around with JWTs. This set is kind of like this set of claims gets used in other strategies or whatever, whether you're making up your own or using something other than Paseto. But yeah, so it goes and goes and goes and goes. But like I said, there's a library for Node that implements different versions of the spec. So we're going to be doing v4 public, I believe. So the first thing we'll want to do is go ahead and create us kind of a wrapper around this library that's going to hide the fact that, this is a v4 versus v3 versus v2, whatever, because our application doesn't really care. So we'll make a new file, module called Paseto, and it'll have two functions in it. One for sign, one for verify. I'm going to restructure this a bit. Function, sign, function. All right. Okay, so when we sign, we basically just want to pass in the payload in calling code, and then this wrapper abstract away kind of the details of key and all that. And that's just a convenience thing. So we'll go ahead and expose payload to the public API, and then on the verify side, we're going to be given a token. So we'll do this. And then I guess as far as it returns, we'll just return what it returns. we want to extract that at all. So I'm going to take v4, I'm going to alias this to Passetto. We need to make ourselves a private key. So constructor equals acquire. Shit. Acquire crypto random bytes. Okay. To string X. All right. So basically, to create a key, we'll need 32 bytes of kind of random data or whatever. So that's what I was just generating down. It's actually amazing that I remember how to do this. I rarely ever do this. So we'll say this is Passetto secret, and we're going to allow Passetto secret. We'll allow folks to override this, and we'll just kind of. Do we even want to bake this in? No, we don't even want to bake this in. We'll put this in our .env configuration. So the other thing we want to go ahead and do is add this to our example. So Passetto secret. All right. So now create secret key, create public key. There may be a better way to do this, but yeah. Secret key. I think I can just pass in a string. Yeah. So we're going to pass in our config Passetto secret. And now to get our public key, say create public key, and we'll pass in the private key. There probably is a way to get both of them in one, but this might work. Should work. So I don't know if these are async. Looks like they are. So I'll return await Passetto sign payload private. I think that's all I need to do. We should go ahead and include this information. So audience is kind of who the token's meant to be for. I don't really care about that all that much. Issuer I do care about, and expiry I do care about. So let's go ahead and set those. These are important because when we go to verify a token, those are additional options we can pass in to make sure those match. So see here, they pass in the issuer. And this looks like a URL, but this can be any string you want. It doesn't actually have to exist or whatever. So we'll go ahead and set an audience, and this will be for whack. Issuer, say it's whack, and then expires in 2 hours is fine. All right, so now we'll say return await Passetto verify. We're verifying the token, we're given the public key, and then our options, so our audience is whack, issuer, whack. And we'll go ahead and do this because they do it in an example, but yeah. Let's go ahead and extract these to constants in case we ever want to change them. So we say that Passetto audience equals whack, issuer is whack. All right, let's write a test. Wonder why it's not like auto completing for me. We'll just roll with it, but it's weird. So let's say subject is some user at example.com. And we're going to expect token length to be greater than 0. So we'll come back over here and just so.test. The fuck? Nice. Nice. Okay, so we're still using node 12. So we got to go back and use a different version, which probably doesn't have the v4 methods on it, which is fine. That is totally cool. Let's try it again. I think the APIs for these should be basically the same. Cool. Key arrow must be a buffer type array, receive type string. Okay. So we'll say buffer from all right. So this is where I was saying there's probably a better way to do this. Node crypto create public private key. Okay. Say create public key from private key object. Let's try this. I don't think this will work though. And I don't know. What?
Oh, I've been solitary for a while now. A lion roaming on without a pride. The last girl left me branded with a broken heart and a sense of closure that I'll never find. But the truth is that I have been biding my time, watching days passing by till I'm close to my mind. I'm cursed, or is it self-inflicted? Or is it simply that my options are restricted? Emotionally closed and I'm straight out of luck with my tail between my legs because I can't open up and I can't break the ice from the sub-zero sting. Cause I still deal with pain and try to build on it. I still feel traumatized from the last love that was in. I thought him to send an angel, but turned out she's only Queen. So if I can open up and if I could let you in, can you fix me up like you're my medicine?
All right.
I've been trying to heal for a while now, doing what I can with broken wrong. The last girl left me branded with PTSD, so
Maybe this works. Alright, closer. So it doesn't like our key type, which is fine. I think we should be able to just type, change the type here, maybe? Let's go back and do that. Stick. See, shit like this is why I'd prefer to use the library to do all this type shit, because I don't know. I don't know. It's invalid for type, but the internet says. Getting close. It doesn't seem right though, to me. It's almost like we should use the library to generate the key. Let's try that. Oh, this library I bet doesn't.
So take me away from here.
It's promising. export.
Just take my hand and bring me away. Just take my hand and bring me away. Take my hand and we'll just fly away.
Nope.
I'd rather try and accomplish something great and fail than try to accomplish nothing and fully succeed. If there's one thing I know for sure, it's that I know nothing. I wish the stars were out tonight instead of all these clouds.
These seem super tiny. Almost like this can't be right. But we're gonna give it a go. We can fix this later. If it works, it works. Okay. So we have something. Okay, so let's write another test. So we need to make sure when we verify this, we actually get the subject out the other end. So, and then we'll also verify that if we tamper with the token, we can't verify it. So, can retrieve payload data from verified token. So we'll basically do the same thing again, and how about we do this? let's grab this token data. So this will be our, well, we don't need to do this. So we'll say const payload equals await verify token. And we need to expect payload sub to be some user at example.com. And let's change it just to make sure it fails. Yeah, so we get some user. So this is working. The last thing is to kind of mess around with that. Tamper with a second. So it won't verify tokens that have been tampered with. So if we tack onto this spicy, then this should fail. Yeah. So this is throwing an exception. I can't verify the set of token gives an invalid signature. So we need to set our test up to expect this failure. Expect exception. I bet it's like just expect bro. Expect bro. Let's look it up. I forget. Just expect exception. Expect T to throw. I guess we did. I thought there was a different way, like a way of setting it up, like static or whatever. Getting distracted, but say exception. Nope, it's done in a closure. Okay, so we'll say expect this function to throw. That's all. The one thing I think we should do is wrap these so that we're not like leaking the Besetted library exceptions all over the place. So I may do that and just throw like a generic error message. But so we need to return. No. Why is this being dumb? I don't want this to be dumb. Get out of here. No, we need that. Received function did not throw. But may just do this. I don't know why this isn't working. This totally should work. And we know this is throwing because it's going up here, but it's complaining we're not handling a promise rejection, which technically this is throwing an exception we're not handling, but I would expect the framework to handle that. So we'll say expect assertions 1, because I'm only going to check that it throws. And we'll catch error and what message is going to be, but we'll just say it's foo, and then look at what it is, and then just make it so invalid signature. And this should get it passing. Okay. So it's not the most readable thing, but we need to move on. So we'll come back and refactor this later. Ideally, you just be like, I'm going to verify a fucked up token, and it's going to expect a throw. And that's as much as you have to write. But development's hard. Obviously, because it took us 30 minutes to, make a public-private key and node. Because I just never do this. All right, so now we have the ability to create our tokens. We can mint tokens as whack, and we can verify them as whack and get the data out of them that we put in. So that's a start. What's next? So we're going to need to create our login endpoint that's going to be taking basic auth, and we're going to need some middleware for authenticating requests, so verifying those tokens and refreshing the token. So I'm going to open up Stoplight real quick because that's where we're going to add our endpoint. And I was playing around with the library earlier. The library we're using supports doing like basic auth or supports providing security schemes, and then we can wire in handlers for those. But what I don't think this does is, I don't think bearer can be a cookie, which we are going to set up to be a cookie. So I'm gonna take 5 minutes and go try to find that part of the Express Open API? Yeah, Express Open API validator. So security. Yeah, so see when this comes through and validates this HTTP, it's really only looking in the auth header. API key would be what we would want to use, but named lowercase. So if I did something like this, and said, so I could say it'll be in a cookie or whatever, but if we ever had clients where that weren't the case, we'd have an issue. What I normally do is, and I'm not gonna do this because I kind of do want to actually play around with the library some. But normally what I do is just say, this is going to be the point in time where we register all the Open API routes. I'll just make my middleware and be like app use API, and then Paceto dot authenticate, Paceto dot refresh. The issue with this is that we've got unauthenticated routes for our login. So then I've got to come put, you know, API login or API off. And it'd really just be post. So you've got to have this unauthenticated route and controller, and you know, that's fine. The issue would be like that would be you could still specify it, I guess, in your OpenAPI spec, but it'd start to conflict. Like you'd be like, okay, well, we're going to point the OpenAPI to this other controller, da 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 da, and then I don't know, it'd just be kind of weird. So I think I'm gonna give the security scheme thing a shot, and we'll just say it's a cookie for now. But I do want to support both. I just don't want to have like both security schemes. It'd be nice if the OpenAPI spec would let me say like this can be a cookie or header. But so I think this is going to be the name of the cookie. So we'll just call it token. So you'll basic auth to the login endpoint, and then everything else will be bearer. And then when we make our operations, we can come in here and add those. It's going to be like this requires basic auth or whatever. So let's go ahead and we'll get it rolling and then see how it goes. And we may not like this at the end. So, and that's okay. So let's make a new endpoint. Login, post, authenticate to get a set of token. Okay. Create. So this one is going to require basic auth. And we will respond object that has the token in it. So they'll also get a cookie, which there probably is a way of specify that in here. I think these are request cookies, not cookies we'll set. But we're going to set a cookie. The body is going to be, it's just going to be basic auth, so there's no body specification. They can send whatever they want to us. Okay, so let's make auth.login. Source API controllers auth exports login equals async. All right. Oh, something I did last night that's worth showing. So ideally, if any of our code and controllers throws an exception, we want that to generate, like basically ultimately end up being a like generic error message in the API. What I've done in the past is had a wrapper called catch errors that would wrap around every express function or request handler. That basically did this. So you'd give it a handler and it would wrap it in an async handler that performed a try catch. And on catch, it would call next and go straight to the error, like the global error handler for the current router. So it's a neat, convenient little function here that I use in pretty much every app. The new thing I'm trying is it's kind of a pain to have to wrap every single one of these, and it also kind of takes away like you see catch errors a lot. So it kind of takes away from the code that's there. So what I did this time was, instead of using one of the built-in resolvers, which this is the module path resolver straight out of the Express Open API Validator package, the last thing I do before I return the handler for the incoming method is wrap it and catch errors. So this does it in one place for the entire app, which is kind of useful. So yeah, here, what we'll want to be able to do is access the past username and password from basic auth. And we will find or create a user at some point. And then we'll need to create our token, and set a signed cookie. Finally respond with the token payload to meet our Open API spec. So this is everything we need to do. The first thing is going to be getting this username and password from basic auth. So we'll pull up Insomnia real quick. This is just like if you ever use Postman, this is like an open source Postman. So you can come in here and make different requests and run them against your app. So we'll say API/login. We're going to send a post request, and we're going to use basic auth. And for this, I'll just say whack. I need to start server. Okay, so we don't have a response here. So let's just response res JSON token is foo or slime. We'll just fake it for now. So this will pass the Open API spec. But like, again, if I come in here and do this and do it again, I'll get a error. Well, I should get an error. It's probably because we didn't mark it as required, right? So this is going to be required. So we'll save this, let the server restart, try again. And now we get response should have required property token. So for now, we'll just slime it because we don't have a token. But we also don't have a username. So if we look, we'll probably see that our authorization header is being set. So if I go in and look at headers, there it is. So this is the username and password slammed together, separated by colon, and then base 64. So what you can do is like, okay, well, I know I'm dealing with basic auth, so I'll just slice off these characters, and then I'll base 64 decode this, and then I'll split it by a colon, and then boom, I've got my username and password. What I'm gonna do is just pull in a package that does that. So there's a package called basic auth. That we'll use for this. Seems overkill to pull in a package to do this, but it's also, this is another one of those things where it's like, it's auth code, and you know, there'll be some edge case or something we don't think of that isn't even valuable to like our business or whatever. It's not valuable to the application for us to own that code. So what you can do is be like const user pass. I think it's the variables that get returned out of here. And say auth, you pass the request, and it figures it out. So we'll come back over here and send passes there. Maybe it's name. Let's try that. Yeah, so name and user. So if I wanted to alias those to something, more explicit, you can do it kind of like this. And now if I go back, I'll have password and username. So this is enough to write code that's something like this: const user equals user find or create username password. And then this function would be set up to search for a user by username, and if it exists, just return it. And if it doesn't exist, create it, but with this password additionally. At least that's what we're going to try to make it do. Next would be validate the user's password. Forgot that. It's kind of important. For this, we could do something where, like, if user dot password, say this, if username is not equal to password, then we'll throw an error. Invalid password. So this is basically just kind of sliming the implementation of our password validation and just say, well, username has to equal password. Here is exactly where we would use that image comparison library, though. Because you got to think, the front end is going to send the data URI as the password. We'll have the data URI in the password field on an existing user object. So we just compare them. And if they're below, was a 95% match or whatever, then we would throw the same error message. So for now, we'll keep it stupid. But then this is our focal point for when we want to plug that special logic in. So let's get this working. So typically I'd say, okay, go make you a test to do this or whatever. I'm not going to do that tonight. Mostly because I don't want to, but the other part is it's not going to be a very valuable test right now. Let's see. But anyway, okay. So inside the API, we've got like controllers, utils. I like to make a models folder. And this is kind of after the model view controller pattern or whatever that kind of exists in every full stack framework you'll work with. But anyway, we'll make us a user.js file here. And this is we're going to use an ES6 class for this. So exports equals user. And here we're going to need a static find or create function that takes properties. Or attributes. Let's say attributes. All right. So let's give this thing a constructor. For now, we'll throw these out as parameters. So this dot username equals username. This dot password equals password. The only reason I'm doing this is so that we have some autocomplete on these property names when we're using the user model elsewhere. And I'm still kind of trying to hunt down a great way to do this. One, as these constructors get longer and longer, you should really stop and be like, okay, why does my object have, 12 pieces of data required to, hydrate it or instantiate it? It's probably a signal that thing's doing too much. But users by nature, you're going to end up with that. I think what we made, when I think about like your display name or, notification settings, stuff like that, maybe there's room for a collaborating object called like a profile or something in the future. And that would be a way to cut this down so that the user's properties are mainly focused on authentication. But we don't know yet. We'll come back. Right now, all we have to do is, come up with something like this. So I actually like the idea right now of, let's not even use a database. We'll just have this. We're going to quickly come back and have a database or whatever. But for now, let's just slime this and have it return a user. So I can say const username password equals attributes. And then this will be username password. So this will always return that. And if you ever, when I'm on a roll, when I'm not stuck making public-private keys or whatever, you'll kind of notice a theme repeat where it's like, maybe my focus right now is getting this to run, kind of almost thinking like a light gray sketch across. So when I dig deep, I'm only going to go so deep. Like find or create, I just need this to run. So I'm going to slime it. But I'm going to get my message API, my public API, my objects right. So this is always going to return a user or throw in an exception. But the implementation of this is usually going to be dumb to start out with, and then we'll come back and I'll switch gears and be okay. Now we're going to focus on the user model and get it actually hooked up to a database and write our migrations and all this stuff. But I found that's easier for me to just stay at like one level of abstraction, kind of in the app or whatever, rather than doing this kind of pop up and down, up and down, up and down. But that's just me. It may just be me. So we've got a user finder create. This is going to give our user instance. Since these match, we could go ahead and kind of make this a little bit smaller. So if user.password is not equal to the password we pass in, then it'll throw invalid password. We just are going to assume that, you always have, it should always match because we're passing in the password here and then it comes out the other end. We're checking the same thing. So that said, I should be able to come back to Insomnia and this still works. So user's not defined. That's easy. So we say const user equals, actually I want to see something. Control. Okay, so it's not like auto importing my junk. That's fine.
You know the way you make me feel. I don't see what's the deal. You said you wouldn't leave. I said.
Let's stop these tests running. Okay, so that's, I thought you could just say exports, but maybe not. Oh, you totally can. I don't know why that wasn't like auto-completing or whatever. Maybe it was just lagging because this laptop's terrible. So we got our user and the password's whack whack. And we obviously made it through this line of code, so we're in pretty good shape. All right, so we set our token and do a signed cookie. So you can just put we could just put the token in a regular cookie. The issue with that is that someone could then play around with that cookie in the browser and try to guess the token. Having the signed cookie is kind of like an extra layer of defense. And if you think about it, the token itself is already signed. So it's almost pointless. But But yeah, I guess let's take it out for now. Right now, we won't do a signed cookie, and let's go add a task. If we do a signed cookie, I have to add a new config for the secret, and I have to go look up the code, like the syntax for doing it and all that, versus just setting a cookie. So this will be good to show uh, use signed cookies for Paceto token storage. Deliver Paceto token via signed cookies. This will be something we can do in kind of an odds and ends string later, because as we're working, we're kind of building up that kind of stuff. So here we need to bring in our Paceto library. Not what I wanted. Oh, it's not going to do it because I'm doing this kind of thing. That's fine. So our token is going to be an assign. Our subject is going to be user.username. We don't really have anything else to put in there right now, so this is fine. Things like issued at and all of that should get automatically populated in our tokens, and that's where like the issued at time is baked into the token. You sign it so they can't mess around with that, and then when you verify it, the expiry is also in there. So the client, whoever the server who's processing that token, when we verify, it should all work out. So we got our token. Now we need to set a cookie. I said I was gonna look up, but now I'm blanking on like express set cookie. I think it's like res.cookie, but res.cookie seems legit. We are gonna need this for verifying. We'll need to be able to get the cookie. Let's go ahead and set that up. npm cookie parser. I'm also going to add this to. We've got a task to like talk about just express middleware. Yeah. There's a bunch of express middleware that are just like, there ought to be a middleware that wraps them all up because they're so common. Cookie server. So here's where we put the secret. Kind of want to just go ahead and do it, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna stay focused. So we should be able to say res.cookie token and token. And then these options are all of our like expires and all that mess. So we know the token expires in, we set it to 2 hours hard coded. We should make this 2 hours as well. But yeah. I'm trying to think if I want to go. There's a library called ms that makes it so you can like say 2h and it converts it to milliseconds or not. Trying to determine if I want to go do that. Let's go look. But for now, we'll just do the calculation ourselves. So we're going to res.cookie HTTP only. It's true. Why isn't it auto-completing these? If we were going to do signing, that's where we would do it. I'm not sure why it isn't. Do I need to do, probably have to install like types cookie parser to get autocomplete on that. But max age be 2 times. That's 2 hours. Yeah. I probably have to like reload or something. It'll be fun. I'll survive. I think that's all we need to do. When we come in and make this a signed cookie, we just add a prop here after we set that secret, and then instead of it being available in rec.cookies, it's rec.signed cookies that we process it. So, all right. So this sets our token, and now we just need to respond with the right token. So we'll do that. And clean up after ourselves a little bit. So now, with any luck, we actually get a token out the back end. So let's pop open Insomnia, run. Response.token should be a string. Okay, so what's going on? Let's set a breakpoint. It's whatever we return out of that sign function. Oh, it's a promise, so we're not awaiting. That's what it is. That's what it is. All right, look at that. There's our token. And we should have got a cookie. There's our cookie. So the nice thing about the cookies is now whenever user from the front end logs in, they'll have that cookie, and that's automatically sent with every request from that point forward. So now we need to go write a protected, kind of want to stay on a roll with the token management stuff. So we need to write our middleware for authenticating the token, and then actually that's all we're going to do. I usually like to write another middleware to refresh the token on every request. We'll skip that for now. So let's write create a Paceto middleware for automatically refreshing tokens. What I don't know is how we're going to fit that into the security scheme handler thing. Like if it just will be natural to fit into that function or not. Theoretically, we could totally do it in that function. All right, so let's go back to our project root and let's make a folder called middlewares and call this auth. So inside of here, we'll have a function authenticate, and this is going to actually do the work of grabbing our token from the cookie, decrypting or verifying it, and then we'll attach the subject to res.locals. And if we can't verify, we'll bail with that error message. So whatever the Paceto library throws, that's what we'll send to the error handler for now. Okay. So the first thing is going to be to grab our token from the current request. So we'll say token equals extract from request. You know what? We don't need to do this right now. We can just say rec.cookies.token. Eventually, we'll want a function that wraps up like, I'm gonna grab it from the authorization header, and if it's not there, I'll grab it from the cookie. But we can always do that later. So we have our token, hopefully. Our payload will be, this is that verify function. So we'll verify the token. This is going to be an async function. So we can await the verification. We're going to try to do this. And if it fails, we're going to call next with that error. Otherwise, we'll say res.locals username equals payload.subject. And now we'll take this middleware and we'll like put it in the stack somewhere so that it's called, and then it should be very, very early in the stack. That's what I'm hoping we can kind of shim this into that security handlers stuff in our OpenAPI package. But this will tack res.locals.username onto the response that goes down the router chain or whatever. You could do a lot here. Like if you knew you were always going to want the current user, you could also say like user and actually grab a, find by username or something like that here, and actually attach like a object instance. This res.locals thing is just a convention within the Express community for tracking local data through the request chain. And aside, another use for this is for generating like correlate IDs. So if you wanted to have at the very beginning of a request or like an operation in your app, you could have a correlate ID generated that would kind of follow through the entire call stack. And then as you're logging stuff, you could be dropping that correlate ID in. So that they're all kind of tied together, which would be like when you send that to Splunk or something, you can like group by those correlate IDs, and it makes it easier to see, oh, this is one transaction through that. We'll say module that exports authenticate. All right, so now we have to come back over here and figure out what this should be. And I know it's security something, and I know that these names have to match what you put in stoplight. So if we did basic auth, then I'm gonna have a basic auth here. I don't know what this should be though after. Request scopes schema, apparently. And then we'll say bearer auth. So for basic auth, I don't even think we need a handler here because it's enough. The only thing we're gonna have basic auth attached to is the login endpoint, and this will validate that they set the authorization header right. So I'll never challenge that here. So I don't think we need this, but we do need this. So I want to set a breakpoint here, and then let's go. Let's go into stoplight and set up a protected endpoint. We'll just say this hello endpoint's now protected. So bearer auth. We'll save. Now if I go over to that, host hello. If I go there, I should get an error message. Or nothing at all. Was it mad? Why is it mad? I think I have to return something from here. We'll return true. Couldn't connect to server. Okay. Okay. then why did it autocomplete that for me? Probably should just go look at the docs. This seems right. Seems more right. Okay, we're listening. Cookie token required. Cool. So if I come over here and log in, I want that to carry over. Why is this not carrying over between them? I mean, I don't know how to add that cookie more than it's already added. Yeah, this is what I want. Raw. Done. Done.
With our hands in the air, we'll be higher flying. Take a breath and we can let it out. Yeah, we'll never go back down. This is you, this is me, this is what we're made of. We won't have to make it all alone. I just wanted you to know. Say that you'll never let go again. And then I'll make a promise to you, my friend. I'll be there for you till the end of time, by your side.
Insomnia not sending cookies captured from another request. Okay, so let's verify that Express is sending that set cookie. Should be. So come over to login, and we look at raw. Nope. Timeline is probably what we want. Yeah. Okay. There's set cookie, and that is how it is in the managed cookies. It's not over here because I don't fucking know. But we can just do this. I'll figure this out later. Can you not send cookies with GET requests in Insomnia? This could be it. So we're going to eventually come back and actually expose this over web ports, and then that should, should help. But until then, we got to do stupid stuff. If they're not allowed, of course it's not. Post. There's a cookie. Burn. Manage cookies. Yeah, I don't think the port matters. I really don't. So, I don't know, that's a tooling thing for sure, but it should be sending the cookie. I think it is something to do with the port, and then Insomnia is just freaking out. But that's fine. So this works for the next, hour and a half. So this is protected. If I come back over here and return false, it should dial me maybe? Or not? So we're gonna need to go do some Googling on why, what's going on here. Let's set a breakpoint, see if we're even hitting this. Yeah, see, we're not even hitting this. So yeah, we need to go Google around and make sure we're doing this right. Bearer auth. Okay. So we'll pop over here and validate securities. Oh, there's a first issue right there. It's that. I'll go ahead and do this too, because that's what they do. Boo. Boo. Try again. Alright, so we hit the breakpoint, we throw, we get boohoo, and a 401. Okay, so that's good. Now, the issue here is we don't have access to the response. So our whole, we want to use a middleware to attach that user information. We can't do. Here, at least. So all that really means is that, we'll put a app.use and bring in our middleware, and that would attach that data, that metadata there. It just sucks to have to verify that twice, So let's poke around here a little bit longer and see if we can find something for that. I also, let me hit this again. I wanted to see, inspect and see what we see on the request. This might be it. We might be able to do rec.res.locals. Whatever. Let's try it. Let's try and see what happens. So we've got our middleware already. If we did authenticate rec.res, issues the error handler. Let's change this up a little bit. Yeah, let's change this up a little bit. Go back to our utils, and we'll add a function for authenticate request, and it'll take an express request handler. Actually, it's not even a request handler, it's just a request. Okay. So this is going to do what our middleware was doing. So let's come back down here and rip this. If we catch an error, we'll say bro, new error, invalid username or password. Or something like that, it's invalid token. We're not going to do this. We don't even need the payload. We're just going to verify and return true if it's good. So then in our, up here, we can say return authenticate request and do that. So I need to come up here and export this. And then, yeah. Cool. So let's mess around with the token and see if it breaks. Bad. Invalid token. Cool. So that's good. And then, like I said, we'll just throw our middleware here, and at that point, I'm just gonna roll with it. I'm struggle busting a little bit because things aren't really organized kind of how I want them to be. But that's okay. And this is only gonna apply to /API. And when I say that things aren't organized, like I kind of want this to be wrapped. I want this to be attached to a router that's mounted at API so that all this behavior gets out of the parent process. But we can do that refactor later. All right. So now with this in place, I should be able to go to my hello world controller, set a breakpoint, and we should have a res.locals on there. So res.locals and nothing's set. So we need to follow that. What's probably happening is, yeah, this is calling our dealio before. So I'm just going to hack it for now. We need this to fire up here, but we don't need it to cause an error if the token isn't set. So let's make a note. Need to find a way to set res locals inside a security handler. And just for poopies, let's try this rec.res.locals foo equals bar. Let's try this before we give up on it completely. Comment this. So res.locals foo bar. So that's it. So then here, this next anymore. Okay, so what we'll do is say, house is authenticated, return, and then we'll call authenticate. This looks super sketch, and that's okay. I actually don't think we need this anymore. We're gonna leave it because I want to move on. But we can refactor this to basically use this. It'll just function in a way where it's like it returns a true or false instead of using the global error handler bits we were talking about doing. All right, so now res.locals doesn't doesn't have anything in it. It should though. Set a breakpoint here. Continue. And sub flag. Yeah. Okay, so it's hitting the hello first. Then this. How's that work? This doesn't make sense to me. It should hit. Okay. 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 That doesn't even make sense. I almost wonder if it was a weird save. Like, let's save this and stop for a bit. Yeah, it's hitting this first again. That doesn't make any sense to me. Oh. That's why. This is doing some asyncy shit too, so I need to await that. Okay. There we go. Okay. Let's get rid of all these. And then, yeah, we can collapse this. Refactor, validate, security, and merge to only one pass through token verification. All right. So we've got authentication working. We've attached username, so we have access to it in the controller, which will be the base for when we're doing operations as the user. That's how we're going to get who's currently authenticated. We need to go actually create users in the database and all that. Trying to think, is there anything else for this we need to do? If we ever wanted to take, protection off of an endpoint too. It's as easy as like, now this doesn't require auth anymore. And theoretically, we shouldn't have the res.locals on it anymore because we're not running through this function. So that's worth verifying real quick. Mostly it's just like a tech toy or whatever. So res.locals is empty now. So that's cool. So now you'll only get that information if you're in a protected endpoint or whatever. All right. So let's go back to our auth controller and actually implement this. So this is going to be doing what's called an upsert, so an update or insert. So we, I think, already have a migration that created a users table for us with username. We just don't have a password. So we need to do that. We need a migration to add that password field. So we'll connect migrate, make, add password field for user. You see this is using the new migration template or whatever. So we'll have autocomplete. So it's going to be an alter table users. And we will table, this needs to be like a big ass text field. Because those data URI are really, really big. Connects long text, MySQL. It's going to be like this, but I think we have to do long text as like the second argument or something. Yeah. So I forget what we saw, but it was like long text is overkill. Medium text. Let's just do medium text. It doesn't actually allocate this much in the database, is my understanding. So it's not like you're gonna like every one of these fields, every row is gonna eat up 4 gigs. But they were getting over this number for sure. So that might actually come back to bite us in the future. I mean, this doesn't need to be keyed on or anything like that, so it's fine just being text. Users, remember we have to, any columns we add, we have to remember to drop them on the downside. So next, migrate up. Oh, starter database. While that's going, we'll go ahead and start bringing in our database utility. So if I remember right, this exports our connects instance. We changed some of this. This is broken now. So I think this is just connects file now. So const connects equals require utils database. Yeah. All right. So docker machine move docker compose up compose yes. And MySQL. Okay. Show tables. describe users. We don't have that. So now let's run the migrations. We don't have the password field. You know what we forgot to do? We forgot to await. So that's something that, as far as Connects is concerned, it ran the migration. So that's actually in the Connects migrations table now. So if we select all from, there it is, applied. So what we'll do is actually down, but then this will fail because there's no there's no column there. So for now, we'll just remove that so we can get it back down. And then put the code back, migrate it up. And now the password's there, and we can run down, and you'll see password drops off. So that's kind of the value in migrations, is it automates schema management for us. All right, so now we have a password. So here, instead of just returning this new user, we need to look for a user matching username first. So let's say const user equals connects users where username, and we'll await this. So if not user, then we want to create the user. For now, we're just going to tell it to return the new user. Otherwise, we'll return the user. And really, we'll end up returning new user where this is user.username and this is user.password. Yeah. So this is still going to be fake if the user doesn't exist, but really the next step is just to create, like insert a row into the database matching these credentials, and then we'll be good. So let's go and test our code. And I also want to see what this value is, just to kind of walk through. All right, so we'll come back over to our Insomnia, log in, send. Okay, we got an error. Secure base doesn't exist. Okay, so apparently we have to add that even though we're not doing anything with it. So let's do that. Basic auth async. And actually, this doesn't even need to be. It doesn't even do anything. We just return true. The only thing we need to check is that if you don't pass an authorization header, does it fail? Okay. So we're at not user, which is where we want to be. So before we move, let's just disable this and make sure we get an error. Authorization header required. So cool. Now, if not user, we want to insert that user. So to do that, say await connects users insert username, password, and that should be it. So what we'll do is set some breakpoints. We'll say here and at the return, and on the next run through this, we should hit this branch and then return to user, and then on the run after, we should skip this branch and be right down here, and we should have a user in our table. So we'll run. There we are. Users undefined. So we'll run to the next line. We'll let that run. Now we should have something in our database. We do. So we continue. This works. We do it again. User is set. And we skip this branch and go straight to here. And we get a different token. So now we have our user database, our find and create method. So we got the upsert going. So this is basically how our registration's done. We don't, like, they're going to log in, and if the account doesn't exist, we'll create it for them. Otherwise, we don't. Couple things to talk about before we move on. Typically, this shit is a terrible idea. If you ever touch passwords in an app you're working on, you never store them in plain text like this. WAC is going to be an exception to this because we're dealing with data URIs as passwords. Typically, what you would store here is you'd take whatever password you were given by them and you'd hash it, which is a non-reversible action. You store the hash. So worst case, someone gets access to your database, they have a bunch of password hashes, and it would take them time to figure out to reverse engineer those hashes back to a password. But what you would do is you'd store the hashes, and then the next time you got someone logging into your app, you'd take the password they gave you, you'd hash it and compare it against the hash you have in your database. So you never actually have the user's password in your database. You have a one-way transformation of that password in the database. Something we could do with our data URI is encrypt the password and store it that way. And that may be something we do in the future. Maybe we'll start off storing them in clear text and it'll just be a bunch of data URIs, basically image data in the password. And then if we decide we want to encrypt it, we'll come up with a key, an encryption key, and we'll write a migration that runs that key through the entire user's database or user's table and fixes everything, and then we'll be good. But anyway, I think this was basically the scope of tonight. We've got our user model. We're actually storing, we've got our registration login process rolling. We'll have access to the current logged in user in any protected endpoint. And we've got a lot of small little details like figuring out, this junk. To make Insomnia happy. Let's see if there's anything. Blah, blah, blah. We punted this. Or we're going to punt it. This will be we'll have a stream where we do user profile management or something like that. So setting their time zone and all that, and display name will be one of those things. Are all the APIs done? Yeah, we're good tonight. So, I think tomorrow is either going to be an odds and ends stream where we just kind of go through some of these things that have been building up. Although I don't think we have enough of those to really fill an hour yet, unless we have something go wrong that we did today with the public-private key. But I think tomorrow we'll actually we'll start on making APIs for creating and joining chat channels. And that'll be good. So we'll talk about we're going to be building out a REST API for interacting with WAC, and we'll talk about some of the just RESTful concepts. So the idea of a resource collection, resources, HTTP, the semantics of HTTP verbs and how they apply to resource collections or individual resources, query parameters, all this stuff. And then hopefully we'll be able to, do the very simple CRUD operations for channels tomorrow. And again, it's just going to be all API stuff. We're not going to do anything in the front end yet. We'll have in this story, there is some kind of permissions baked into it. So we'll probably keep that really stupid simple to begin with, but I have been looking at a library called Castle, CASL, that I want to play around with. So I think eventually we're going to kind of fit ourselves into that. But for tomorrow, we'll keep it really, really straightforward. But anyway, let's get everything committed so we can wrap it up. we didn't commit once throughout this entire thing. Um, so now we're going to kind of go through and back all this up. So one thing is create this var directory. We don't want to store any of this actually. So I want Passetto to be in there. So let's make a get ignore in here. We'll ignore everything except for the get ignore, because the user is going to have to drop their own keys here, which means we'll need documentation for how to generate those keys. This, not what we did. I also want to go back through because these keys look really small, and that may just be how it works, but they don't look right to me. But it works. Okay, so let's do everything to do with Passetto utilities. So say var source API utils tests Passetto source API utils Passetto. Package. Actually, I'm going to go back to package. No, I'm not. Implement internal APIs to generate Passetto tokens. Source. Now we'll do our middleware and OpenAPI setup. So that OpenAPI, source API WAC, source API middleware, source API controller. Implement where auth and basic auth security handlers. Add user model and associated password field database. So Passetto Okta. Just notice we don't even need this. Need this. These I'm going to include the values as like hints. to what they should do whenever they set up. We'll want all of this in a README though. Fix.env example. Cool. Alrighty. So yeah, tomorrow we'll make some channels, join some channels, delete list, all that good stuff. This is done. All right. Well, I'm signing off. I'll see y'all tomorrow around 9, 10 Eastern.